debt. First of all, you can't create debt without bipartisan cooperation. And if anybody has watched the legislature over 4 years, there has not been a lot of bipartisan cooperation.
The one in Washington or the one in Nassau?
The one in Nassau. There hasn't been a lot of bipartisan cooperation to create debt, which would take 13 votes, much less $2 billion in debt. So I'd like to just dispel that. If you look at the Deloitte institution, which is our auditors, who have been the auditors here for probably, I don't know, 20 years, as long as I've been. In 2000, when from the time my opponent took office to the time he left office, debt increased $402 million. That's the auditor's saying. Since I took office, in the same period of time, it decreased $2.5 million. $2.5 million. And that's, in light of the many challenges, that we've had here. So, I mean, I just want to set forth what we've been doing with the finances here, with our fiscal recovery, while at the same time concentrating on what's the most important thing, is having a strong economy with job opportunities.
So I think you've addressed some of the fiscal issues that you addressed now. So there's some people around here that have questions. We try to keep it organized. So why don't we start?
Thank you so much for coming. We greatly appreciate it. Mr. Mangano, you and I have had quite a relationship over the last 4 years. I think when you first came in, truth be told, I made no ifs, ands, or buts that you were a breath of fresh air, and we were actually excited in thinking that we would have an ally in the county exec's office that truly understands the importance of youth services. Unfortunately, less than a year later, we received notice that we would be receiving a reduction in funding for youth services, even though youth services was funded through red light cameras, which were tax-free funds, which you yourself went on the record for and advocated that they be used strictly for youth services. Nonetheless, you instituted that cut, and none of the agencies really, we agreed it was difficult times, and we allowed to, we continue moving forward. Lo and behold, I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, the youth system was decimated, and it continues to be decimated. The fact that the Nassau County Youth Board was dismantled, a system that was an exemplar for the rest of the state, was completely gutted and dismantled on your watch. And so one of the things that we were extremely happy to hear was that this year, you and the legislature were able to barter a deal. And one of the things that I say is, clearly this wasn't, you doing this on your own. You made a tactical move that unfortunately didn't work, and the legislature didn't approve the bonding that you were looking for, and as a result, youth services was caught in the middle of that. The question that is now at hand, we're glad to see that full services were restored. I don't know if the checks actually came out yet. I'm hoping that they're en route, because the press conference was held way before the funding came out. But my question now becomes, magically during an election year, those funds, both sides were able to come to an agreement and youth services were restored. What kind of a guarantee can we get from you to fully restore the youth board? And by that I mean pre-Mangano cuts, or Mangano/Democrat cuts, prior to that, where we actually had a functioning youth board. We lost over a century of experience on that. As far as the staff that were let go, these were folks that wrote grants and got us monies and assisted in a number of different issues. So what kind of a commitment can you make sure that in the next 4 years, regardless of how bad it gets, that youth services won't be on the chopping block next year or any year after?
Well, let me just preface this by saying, there's very little discretionary funding in the county of Nassau. And when people fight, it's discretionary funding that falls to it. And unfortunately in this seat, that's where the buck stops. You have to be able to continue to run government. So that's the real issue there, Sergio. The fact of the matter was, we put forth a plan that kept everything intact, didn't ask our taxpayers for more money, and dealt with the past. That was sensible government, and that would deserve bipartisan support. Unfortunately, if you don't have bipartisan support, bad things happen. And they're not things that we relish or take pride in. It's just the economics of running county government. The good news is that we have come together for the first year of the 4-year plan. The good news is that we are building our surplus once again in Nassau County instead of having it decimated as it was when I took office. And those are all things that strengthen the county and strengthen your position and allow us to actually work with you to improve the support for youth services. Obviously I have a long record of supporting youth, both not just governmentally, but in my private life. And there's nothing more that I'd like to do than, continue to support the great programs. And I think that we've done some wonderful things in our administration to support it. Those were not good times in the county, and I hope that everybody would encourage people to come together and stay on the plan.
But just so that we could, one of the things that we said was we would follow up to make sure we got answers to the questions that we asked. Is what kind of guarantee or promise can, because what happened was, let's be clear, red light cameras existed to fund youth services. Whatever, this was discretionary funding that already had its own funding source that George and a number of other folks lobbied for. We carried the water. So that funding was private. It wasn't coming out of the county's budget. So my question to you becomes, first off, it's two-pronged, and it was in the point, so I hope you get them soon. The first thing is, we lost over a century of experience by the folks that were just let go. We would like to know if you have any, as far as full restoration would mean those individuals being offered their jobs back. And the other part of that would be you actually making a commitment to saying that youth services will not be on the chopping block next year, the third year, the fourth year, within the next 4 years.
As you know, it's fully restored. And the fact of the matter is we put a 4-year plan that keeps the youth board services in there. As long as everybody stays on the financial plan, there'll be no issue. And the fact of the matter is, I believe that we are headed to much brighter times. And hopefully the worst of times are behind us. The worst of the fiscal pressures have, we've walked through those storms. Part of walking through those storms with the right-sized government was to make government affordable, to improve our economy, and that helps everybody. It helps the people that you service by having them have the ability to get a job. We launched an effort where many people talk about transit-oriented development, and they've talked about it for a decade. 4 solid projects in the works that create apartments here. Convert unused office buildings into apartments. We are doing the things necessary to help our youth and help our county. While others talk about it, envision it, we're the guys that have to, and ladies and gentlemen here, that roll up our sleeves and get the work done. So there's something to show for it. So there's nothing more than I like to do than to support you, support the efforts here. You all do very, very great work, God's work, and make a commitment to do all that I can to support you in your endeavors. We're willing to listen and see what we can work out with whatever expertise you feel that's lacking here, even our staff. We're happy to do that.
Donna?
Yes. Mr. Mangano, do you have a plan to ensure specific protections which are articulated in policy, practice, and possible legislation for the protection of health and human service agencies, organizations which provide services within the corridor? These agencies have an annual budget of less than $500,000, and their funding should never receive funding increases of less than 2%.
Well, I think that we've done, very well with our health and human services. If there's
I would have to know which.
we could list each one. We monitored each one.
Yeah, one of the things I was saying, and if you don't mind me jumping in, was
Just tell us your name again.
Brian Nugent, Director of Government.
And Brian, just you're welcome. We're not going to step on anybody's tongue. But if Mr. Mangano wants to get back to us on an issue, he's welcome to do that. We want to try and use the time.
There's absolutely no plans
Okay.
there's only plans to continue health and care. That's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you, right now, if you know, do you know if someone is beat up by a police officer, where they have to report that if they want to make a complaint against the police? Do you have? You may not have an idea, but right now,
Imagine just call the police.
you call the
911.
you call the foxes.
You go to district attorney, obviously.
District attorney only take it on as a complaint, and they have discretion on whether or not they're even going to look at it or not. There is no other place that is outside the Nassau County Police Department that can evaluate in a independent way the actions of Nassau County Police. Given the fact of the size of our police department and it being one of the, if not the highest paid police in the country, what are your thoughts about an independent, non-political civilian complaint review board for Nassau County policing.
We certainly be willing to talk to you about that and see how that can work within our system, sure.
And just a follow-up to that, with regard to talking about that, at this point, I guess you would assume that the police would be against that.
Not certain.
Okay.
Not certain if they'd be against it, perhaps they would, you know, but as you know, that we've put a very strong commissioner of police to run Nassau County. He has instituted significant discipline. He has taken it very, very seriously. I think that we have perhaps one of the best commissioners that you can hope for here in Nassau County. He's a distinguished New York City chief, one of 8 chiefs, and I think Tom Dale is doing a wonderful job, and I think that he would certainly be taken back. Anyone believe that he's not dispensing justice evenly, and certainly with care and pride with respect to the Nassau County Police Force is his goal, and then within are many issues with respect to that, many community issues where, you know, certain there were certain sensitive issues that certainly deserved his attention, and he's been there. So I would say we should sit down and talk with our police commissioner. He's, I believe, doing a great job leading the Nassau County Police Force.
So would you agree to at least sit down and
Yeah.
start to talk about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.